Okay, this is part number 4 of Creativity, Quotes on Creativity. This is the book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. Okay, we'll start out with a quote by Brian Tracy. Creative people are constantly reading. They read primarily nonfiction. Yeah, you have to constantly be filling your brain with new ideas to help you come up with new stuff. And I also like to read fiction. And what I've often found is I'll be reading some novel and all of a sudden something in that novel will remind me of whatever the scientific thing is, and that'll create a good metaphor for the topic. But I also like what Schopenhauer says. Yes, you should read. Like, for example, let's say I listen to an audiobook in the car on my way to work. Then when if I'm at a stoplight and something good comes up, I'll take a note card and I'll jot it down on the note card because I want to remember. I'm going to go back to it. Then when I come home, I'll throw it on my desk, a pile of stuff to be looked at, and I'll look back at it and see if that fits into anything else I'm interested in. Also, let's say you drive your car to work and then you park in the parking lot. Okay, then you have to walk to your building, whatever it might be. During that time, you think about it. You say, okay, well, what did I just hear this morning in that book that was interesting? Okay, and how does that relate to other things I'm studying? For example, right now I'm studying mitochondria. I'm listening to a book about mitochondria. And I'll say to myself, well, gee, it's fascinating that it's a proton pump, which is the mechanism of producing energy in a human mitochondria and all eukaryotes, but actually it's also a proton pump that produces energy in bacteria between their plasma membrane and their outer cell wall. And it's also a proton pump that produces energy in photosynthesis. So it's a major component of life. Okay, that's pretty interesting. All right, so anyways, let's go on to the next thing. There's different types of creativity, of course. You can just improve traditional methods, like Norman Rockwell, the illustrator, improved traditional methods. You can totally innovate and do something new, like Salvador Dali with his style of painting. Here's a quote by Nietzsche. What is originality? To see something that has no name as yet and hence cannot be mentioned, though it stares us all in the face. The way men usually are, it takes a name to make something visible for them. Those with originality have, for the most part, also assigned names. Yeah, a lot of times that's the case. Everybody's seeing something, but nobody can express it, articulate it. Okay, Goethe. The most original of authors are not so because they advance what is new, but more so because they know how to say something as if it had never been said before. Okay, Nietzsche. All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. Nietzsche. All I need is a sheet of paper and something to write with, and I can turn the world upside down. What I found is, first of all, you got to come up with an idea. Then the second of all, you have to have a method to let people hear about it. You can make a YouTube video. If you write a book, probably no one will ever look at the book unless you've got good marketing. I heard somebody else say it's easy to write a book. The hard part is to sell it. To market something is actually a difficult skill. It's a valuable thing. For any business, sales is more important than product. And then the old joke was by Kiyosaki. He said, look, who can make a better hamburger or cheeseburger than McDonald's? Anybody. But who can sell it better? Nobody. Okay. This guy, John Malloy, wrote a good book on creativity called How to Work the Competition into the Ground and Have Fun Doing It. And he says, creative people are highly intelligent. In general, you have to be able to see things in the usual way before you can see them in a new way. Same thing with comedians. Malloy, he continues, the really creative engineers and scientists, they often had a period of prolonged isolation in their childhood or youth. Isolation from their peers, sometimes from their families. They often had few friends. They learned to entertain themselves with their own thoughts and to live in a world of ideas. And there's lots of stories like that. Isaac Newton was kind of like disinherited by his mother when she ran off with some new man, and he had to live with some of his relatives by himself. He's real lonely, and he's just studying and thinking. Then they tried to make him into a farmer, and he didn't want that. You'll see other things like Talleyrand. He was sent off to, he had a club foot, so they just sent him to become a priest rather than to inherit the family business, and he just spent a lot of time in the library. And lots of guys. Faraday got a job, Michael Faraday, the great chemist and physicist and expert on electricity. He got a job working in a bookstore so he could read the books. Ben Franklin apprenticed himself to his brother's print shop and then went and did some other things in England just so he could get experience. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is it's a normal thing for a young man on his way to greatness in an intellectual career to go through a phase, they call it, time in the wilderness, of prolonged loneliness and extensive reading, where they really develop a deep knowledge of something, and that's just part of it. Highly creative people are often very skeptical. What I've noticed, I've been around some creative geniuses. They tend to be very skeptical, even kind of cantankerous, and kind of disagreeable, because you have to believe there's something better out there, or else why would you pursue it? I know when I went through medical school the first time around, I believed everything. I just sort of, oh, isn't this wonderful? Match the ill to the pill and send a bill and you cure the patient. Isn't that wonderful? It wasn't until later when I saw that the patients weren't getting better, and I was fat, my parents were sick. I'm like, gosh, something's wrong. Either medicine can't do anything, or I'm missing something. So anyways, that got me to really read, go into the literature rather than just the medical textbooks. Here's a quote by Leo Burnett. Curiosity is the secret of highly creative people. Yes, that's one of the things I've seen. Like, I knew the guys who were like the A-plus students at Stanford, and they were different than the other students in the sense that they weren't just taking it for a grade. They were really curious about it. I was lucky enough to know a guy like that, and he was friends with a professor, and the professor took us going for bird watching. And we really learned a lot of biology and ecology just from conversations during bird watching, and it made it a lot of fun. Edward de Bono, creativity is the most important resource of them all. So to be creative in a field, you first have to learn it well with deep immersion. You have to seek information from multiple different viewpoints so you can sort of figure out for yourself what is objectively true. You want to get hands-on experience with it. If possible, find a mentor or expert to teach you. Then, start trying to do things yourself, trying to improve on it. Beethoven liked the long walk, so did Goethe, so did Nietzsche, so did Ralph Waldo Emerson. A lot of really smart people like that. You'll often get a great idea right in sort of like when you're waking up in the morning. It's good to have a note card on your desk not far from your bed, and you write stuff down when you have a great idea upon waking. Sometimes you get it when you take a shower in the morning. And you always want to write it down right away so you don't lose that idea. Malloy says, highly creative people are logical, pragmatic, nonconformist. Okay. He says, you have to risk being laughed at. People everywhere laugh at geniuses, and you have to face the fact that even if you make a breakthrough, it may cost you your credentials, your credibility, your career. Risk-taking is an essential part of creativity. Yeah, if you're going to discover something nowadays in conventional medicine or even science and toxicology and nutrition, a lot of people are just going to hate you. They're going to hate you because there's an established system that's making money off keeping everything the same. So when somebody comes along and does something good, they don't get a reward. They get an intense backlash. Like I said, I had a friend, a molecular biologist, and he had a friend who figured out that high fructose corn syrup was routinely contaminated with mercury. They told him not to publish the paper. He published the paper, and he was fired from his university. And that sort of thing happens a lot. Creative persons have learned from experience that the world does not understand them. They eventually no longer expect to be understood by everyone. Yeah, and I think that's just something you have to accept, because most people, like we have herbivore physiology, they tend to have herbivore mentalities. They say the right thing to do is the normal thing to do, to stay in the middle of the pack. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. And that's okay for social thinking, to get along with people. But if you ever want to achieve anything unique and good and creative and advance a field, then you're going to have to be on the cutting edge, and you're going to have to do things that other people are shocked by, they find controversial. And you just have to be able to handle it. And what ends up happening, why it's good to kind of spend some time at one of these big fancy places like Harvard or Stanford or something, is what you realize is most of the so-called experts are phonies. My father told me that when I was a young man. He said, you're going to find out most of these medical, big shots are just phonies. And actually, he was right. I found that over time and time again. A lot of the biggest big shots, for example, in the big medical societies, they just made their name by social networking. They really don't know anything, and they really don't contribute anything. You'd be amazed at how true that is. So once you've seen that, then you recognize that there are some real geniuses at these places. But usually the real genius at these places, they're ostracized. So I saw that. There were some great imaging-guided surgeons. And the ones who were the best ones, they didn't get along with their department chairman. They were potentially going to be fired. But they're the ones that were making all the unique discoveries. So anyways, that's it for this is part 4 on creativity quotes.